the Madman! Welcome to the top custom Hearthstone cards of the week. Today, we start off with a mad one. The Mad Merchant. 1 mana, 1/3 legendary. Start of game. If your deck has only legendary cards, upgrade your starting hero power and reduce its cost to 1. Design, 2 stars. Balance, 5 stars. Having an upgraded hero power on turn 1 and costing only 1 mana by itself is really insane. Imagine always being able to begin the game with 2 1/1s. That's the upgraded Paladin hero power. And then just being able to cast Lost in the Jungle every single turn, basically. That's pretty good and is really insane, but the drawback is pretty insane as well. There's nothing you can do to buff these guys because there's no legendaries that affect guys. And a deck full of standalone good cards is basically an arena deck. Yeah, you got to run Zephyrus, you got to run Reno, and perhaps very importantly, you got to run Janela, and you got to summon Ragnaros because turn 1 you can just use your hero power, deal 2 damage. Do that 4 times throughout the game, play the 7 mana Ragnaros along with Janela. That seems really good. And yet, I gave that a balance of 5 because I feel like that would be a reasonable deck, but not insane. I managed to put about 24, 25 playable / good cards in it, and then you'd fill the bottom 5 with, some not so great cards. But you could run a pretty strong deck with it. I think it would actually become tier 2 or tier 3. So it would be a fine spot and it'd be kind of a different take on a deck, but perhaps, and this is the problem with the design, it's not that interesting. You're just playing random cards, really, with the sole basis that they're legendary, and it's really a deck that just shows off hero powers, and that's all. The cards are mostly just because you have no other choice than to include these cards. So there's no real deck building. And of course, there's the other problem, where there will be so much of a riot if this is actually a good deck. Like if this were tier 1, or even tier 2. People would be like, it's a 48,000 dust deck. Wow. Could a meme effect be made on a legendary like this? Sure, it could be. If your deck has only legendary cards, could be a wacky card that's given for free to everybody if it had absolutely no merit. But if it's somewhat competitive at all, no, we can't do that. It would just be too unfair. Ngraz the Insatiable. 7 mana 5/5. All spells must target Ngraz. Death Rattle. Add copies of all spells cast on this to your hand. Design, 4 stars. Balance, 1 star. I think this is an interesting take on Spell Taunt because not only does it taunt your opponent's spells, it also taunts your own spells. And it doesn't only taunt the opponent's damage spells, it also taunts their buff cards. Similarly, it doesn't only taunt your buff cards, it taunts your damage spells. So you'd want to play it in a deck with few spells that dealt direct damage. But at the same time, this is really a tech card that's specifically made against decks light on minions, heavy on spells. A 7 mana 5/5 isn't going to be played. It has an interesting side effect as well, where you can put a bunch of buff cards on the card and then you'll get them back when the original card dies. Test Subject, though, was a 1 mana card and still wasn't played, and was in Priest, where extra arms went around. Ngraz is 7 mana 5/5, and that's even worse than a 1 mana 0/2. So the balance is way too low. There are very, very few decks that this card would be playable against. If you're playing a 7 mana 5/5, you're basically losing the game. You could try to get the value by buffing this card and getting the spells back to your hand, but that just takes way too long. Playable perhaps at 5 mana, and only perhaps then, which explains why the balance is a 1 star. Mirage Blades. 3 mana rogue spell. Draw a weapon from your deck, split it into 1 durability pieces that cost 1. Design 5 stars, balance 4 stars. This one's really creative. There's a lot of different weapons that you can draw from your deck, and even though this is a rogue spell, rogues steal stuff from other decks, so it's not inconceivable that you would somehow shuffle in a non-rogue weapon into your deck. But of course the stuff to focus on is natural rogue weapons, and what is really unfair? Well, weapons with death rattles perhaps, because you'd rather sometimes there not be 2 durability on these weapons. So Necrium Blade, for example, you would get 2 1-mana Necrium Blades. So play one for 1 mana, swing it, immediately activate a death rattle, play another one for 1 mana, swing it, activate, use another death rattle. You can even have a 1 mana play dead type effect, because you could play Necrium Blade number 1, immediately play Necrium Blade number 2, and then swing with Necrium Blade number 2. This is a little bit too strong, because simply playing the Waggle Pick is 4 mana, and you swing it twice. But Mirage Blading Waggle Pick gives you 2 1-mana Waggle Picks, effectively making you pay 5 mana for the total of the Waggle Picks. Since you get an extra Death Rattle result, if that Death Rattle is used on something really crazy that returns something to your hand, like Leroy for example, it can even be used for combo activators because they're 1 durability pieces that cost 1. I think it is a really creative way to think about rogue weapons in a very different way. Given that at the moment Waggle Pick and Necrium Blade aren't really that big of an issue, it might be interesting to create a weapon-focused deck, and Mirage Blades is a very interesting effect. So I think simply putting the mana cost on Mirage Blades up to 4 mana could be pretty interesting. And then of course you've got to be on the lookout to not print too crazy of extra effects on rogue weapons as a result, during the era that Mirage Blades would be around for. Impassioned Orator. 3 mana 2/5, your minions with can't attack can, in fact, attack. Design 3 stars, balance 5 stars. Can't attack is only on a very small subsection of minions. Right now there's Ancient Watcher, Arcane Watcher, and there's a few other ones, some of which may be in Wild. And it's a very, very minor niche effect. So niche that should certainly not be a common card. It should probably be an epic card. But furthermore, past that, this shouldn't even really be a card because it interacts with so few cards. The balance is a 5 because the 3 mana 2/5 is fine, and certainly you would put this card in a deck with Ancient Watcher and Arcane Watcher. Just really too narrow and specific a card. Knockout! Warrior 0 mana spell, deal 2 damage to a damaged minion. Design 3 stars, balance 3 stars. Simple card. It's actually nearly the same as Devastate. 1 mana, deal 4 damage to a damaged minion. Devastate isn't played that often, so Knockout at 1 mana less will not really see much play, dealing 2 damage less. Knockout can certainly be knocked up in power level to deal 3 damage. So that's my suggested balance change here. Deal 3 damage to a damaged minion. Exciting card? Not really, but reasonable card. Holy Crab! 3 mana 2/3 Divine Shield, Beast. Design 2 stars, balance 4 stars. This is clearly a card made just for the play on the words of Holy Crap! Cool play on words by having a crab with Divine Shield indicating the holiness of said crab. The stat line is fair. And ow, my foot is asleep again. You experienced this last time. What is it with cards? I must sit in a strange position. Ow, ow, ow. Lightning Creeper. A shaman 3 mana 1/5 elemental with taunt. Has +2 attack while you have overloaded mana crystals with an overload of 1. Design 5 stars, balance 5 stars. I like this a lot. It reminds you of Tar Creeper, a 3 mana 3/5, but it's stronger than Tar Creeper, stronger and weaker, in that the first turn you play it, of course, is a 3/5. When it comes back to you, it's a 3/5 as well because your overload is in effect. And once more, when you pass to your opponent, it'll still be a 3/5 the turn after you've played it, because you'll still be overloaded from that turn you played it. And then sometimes it'll be a 1/5 because you'll fail to overload, but given that each time you overload, you basically overload for 2 turns, it will pretty consistently be a 3 mana 3/5 if you have any amount of overload support with it. But here's the catch, it has overload 1, which means it's basically a 4 mana card. And a 4 mana 3/5 is Sen'jin Shieldmaster, which isn't exactly overpowered by any means. Looks strong, but when I look at it even more, I'm like, I wonder if that's even that strong at all. So, a fair card, an interesting way to make a interesting Shaman card that isn't just simply big stats with an overload, like Flame Reef Faceless. A little bit of finesse required with overload. Potentially could be even stronger than this, I would say. Desert Lance, Paladin Weapon, 4 mana 3/2, Battle Cry, set a minion's attack and health to 3. Design, 4 stars, balance, 4 stars. I like it. It's simply the Keeper of Uldaman text on a weapon. It also has the 4 mana Keeper of Uldaman, so essentially, instead of getting a 3/4 minion, you're getting a 3/2 weapon. A 3/4 minion is about 3 mana. A 3/2 weapon is worth probably a little bit less than 3 mana. But there's a big catch. The Keeper of Uldaman cannot immediately remove the minion. Desert Lands can immediately remove the minion. So it's kind of like the Rogue Walk the Plank, except you take 3 damage, and you get to deal another 3 damage later with another charge of the weapon. It's a strong card, and I actually think this card might be printable as is if Paladin is in a weak spot. Just simply give them a strong card. But then again, if you really think about the way that Paladin works, they fight fair almost to a fault. Their cards all debuff a card, but never outright have the capability of killing them. The Desert Lance, yes, it's debuffing or buffing your own card to a 3/3, but then the Desert Lance can simply kill it. That strikes me as somewhat un-Paladin-like, to have one card combo with itself to be able to kill something. So I was thinking maybe it would be interesting for this card to be made into a 2/2 weapon. Because this card is a bit strong at the moment, I think that's an interesting nerf. Health Pool, a Warlock spell. Destroy all friendly minions, restore health to your hero equal to their combined health. Design, 5 stars, balance, 1 star. Destroy all friendly minions is really interesting text. Better be a really powerful effect that follows that. And restoring health to your hero equal to their combined health, So this card reminds me of Dark Pact, which originally was 1 mana, destroy a friendly minion, and then restore 8 health. Found to be too powerful, because mostly Carnivorous Cube, and then nerfed to restore 4 health instead. I think in a similar way, Health Pool could simply cost 1 mana, and I think that the restore health to your hero equal to their combined health, still fine. But because you're destroying all friendly minions, which is a substantial drawback. Sure, you could gain a lot of health from it, but I'm sure you lost a lot of value from the health of your minions. It's very warlocky in nature to take your minions' health and feed it into yourself, so I like it. And that brings us to the trump card of the week, Duplicat. A hunter 1 mana 1/2 beast. Battle Cry, draw a Duplicat from your deck. Design, 5 stars, balance, 5 stars. So it's a lot like Firefly. You play the 1 mana 1/2, you get a 1 mana 1/2, and then you play the other 1 mana 1/2, there's no Duplicat in your deck, you're pretty much done. There's a few interesting finesse things you could do here. You could Dire Frenzy your Duplicat, and then you'll have 3, 4, 5 Duplicats in your deck, and then you play the Duplicat that you drew from the first Duplicat, you get a 4/5 Duplicat from your deck for 1 mana. And then you could play that chain. That could be a pretty interesting interaction. There's definitely deck thinning benefits to playing Duplicat. You're basically playing a 29 card deck instead, and you get to run a Firefly, which is a pretty strong card, especially if it has the Beast tag. Nice. Simply a cool card to have, and it's nice for it to be Hunter, because if it were neutral, probably a lot of decks out there would run it, but cool to give it to exactly Hunter. Holy crap, weren't those amazing cards? Make sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when the next top custom Hearthstone cards of the week is up.